So this area right here is eventually going to become, once the construction is done, an area for staff, and also we plan on doing some event space out here where with the shade from the trees, we're going to be able to do some really neat outdoor gatherings and cooking, fire pits, etc. And then behind us over here is where we're going to do some more formal sit down with some really neat live slab picnic tables and things of that nature. This greenhouse structure right here that we've put up is actually a King Stropharia wine cap mushroom bed where we're growing the wine cap mushroom. The wine cap mushrooms are not commercial cultivated. These are exclusively outdoor on wood chips. They flush up here in the spring and then again in the fall, and you can get a pretty good yield off of a bed of this size. We've already harvested probably over 15, 20 pounds here. So here's the commercial greenhouse that was on site at the property when we first came on to the Millstone location, and our partner Kurt has been really working hard here as part of Mighty Dare Farms, which is the name of this property location, and growing tremendous amounts of herbs and heirloom vegetables from seed. So he's very close to be putting these into the ground outdoor where we've tilled the property and prepped the beds. We did a pretty good amount of farming last year as well, so we're excited to really expand the garden here this year. So Kurt just showed up here, who's the owner of this property, Mighty Dare Farms, and we're about to go inside and take a look at the rooms, the progress for the build out, and show you around and tell you a little bit more about what we've got going on. So the first room here that we're about to walk into is going to be the lab room. And this is going to be the spot where we're going to be inoculating the bags of substrate with the various strains of mushrooms that we're looking to grow. So we're going to be bringing in bulk substrate material input ingredients like red oak sawdust and soy hulls, which will be pasteurized in a cooker. And at that point, once they're cooled down, we will inoculate the bags with the strains of mushroom that we're looking to grow.
So it's a whole process that takes place here. So we get the soy hull, the sawdust, mix it together with water, bag it, pasteurize it, and then cook it. That's the pasteurization process. And then once it's pasteurized, as Casey said, in this clean room, we inoculate it with the spores that start to grow. And then once those are done, we can go start at the other end of the building and move it through the different stages as the mushrooms are growing. So this is the incubation room. It's the biggest room in the build out because we're going to want to have as many blocks as we can incubating and getting started. And so after they get cooked and they get inoculated, they come in here, and the mycelium, which we can think of like the roots, start to digest that soy hull and that sawdust, and they populate that whole plastic bag, that block, become white. And that happens in here in the dark, and all we have to do is keep pumping the carbon dioxide out of here because it produces a lot of carbon dioxide. And as we do that, those blocks start to fill up, and once they get ready, they do something called pinning, which is they grow these little teeny baby mushrooms, and we know they're ready to go. And that's when they move down the process. And this room right here is what we're calling the plant room. It's where we're going to grow hydroponic plants, mostly lettuces, basils, spices, things like that. But what's really unique about it is it uses LED lighting to actually, light the plants. But plants consume carbon dioxide and they produce oxygen. When the blocks are incubating, they produce carbon dioxide. So rather than just pump that carbon dioxide into the environment, as the carbon dioxide levels start to rise in the next room, we're going to flow it into this room, which will allow the plants to ingest that carbon dioxide, to absorb it, and that'll allow them to grow faster. And they convert that carbon dioxide into oxygen, so they release oxygen. So instead of producing excess carbon dioxide, we're using it to feed the plants in a way, give them nurture them, if you will, have them grow faster, and we're neutralizing the environmental impacts of the carbon dioxide that's produced by the blocks. So it's this example, and we're so excited about it, and Casey and I just spend so much time thinking about how can we not only use this as a business, but as a demonstration project for how, if you're really smart on how you do things, you can actually profitably make money because we're helping the environment. And it's one of those things that people don't think about. They think that environmental stuff is all the cost. Well, we're actually helping the environment and making money out of it because the plants are going to grow faster because of the excess carbon dioxide. And that's a really great way to think about these kinds of problems. And so as we've been building out this barn, we've been thinking through how do we actually not just make this a business, but make it a demonstration project about how you can make money and save the world at the same time.
So as Kurt described in the incubation room, once the bags give off the appearance of the pinning stage, that's when our growers are going to know to bring them into the fruiting room. And at that point, what we do is we'll introduce oxygen by creating a slit on the bag, and essentially that triggers the entire organism, the bag itself, to trigger the fruiting process of the mushroom. With the mycelium running and colonizing the substrate, when we introduce the slit in the bag, it triggers the whole bag to fruit, because the substrate's being colonized and the organism essentially knows that the nutrient level is running low, and with mushrooms, the spore release is the only way to ensure the continuation of the species. So when we're making that slit, it's triggering the mushroom to go into its fruiting stage. The slits that we make varies from one strain to another, and even depending on the environmental conditions.
And what's really interesting about these rooms, these two fruiting rooms, is we have to keep them air conditioned, keep them at around 62, 64 degrees, high humidity, because that's what the mushrooms like when they're fruiting. And in addition, as they fruit, they produce a ton of spores. And so we have to make sure that we pump that air out of the back of the building, because we don't want the spores all over the building. So we actually take that contaminated air, if you will, with the mushroom spores and pump that out of the building. And it's also, from a safety point of view and a health point of view for the employees, we want to get as much of that spore out of the air as we possibly can. So we have to keep this cool and damp, and then pump the excess spores out of the building.
Any chance of getting mushrooms growing where the vents are?
Well, if we're really lucky, we'll have mushrooms growing everywhere here. But you need to have a lot of conditions come together. You can't just have the spores, you have to have the wood, you have to have the moisture, you have to have the temperatures. So there are always possibilities of having rogue mushrooms around the place, but basically these species are very specific about the conditions that they require, so it's unlikely that we're going to have massive blooms of oyster mushrooms on the property.
Except our compost pile.
Except our compost pile, which is pretty exciting, because that's another piece of it, which is what do we do with the block when we're done? And so after these mushrooms have fruited and we've harvested those fruit, it produces this what's left over is a digested wooden block that's got the mycelium in it and a little bit of wood and soy left over. And so what we do with those is we grind those up, and then in a bed with red wiggler worms, feed them that with a combination of coffee grounds, and we completely return all of that back to earth, and it produces these incredible worm castings, which we then can use in farming on the farm out there, or sell them in the farmers markets when we sell our mushrooms.
Right, and with that mycorrhizal fungi that's in that substrate, 95% of plants have a symbiotic relationship with that particular type of fungi. So, the synergistic working of the plant and the fungi together really is going to be amazing for the crops that we're growing on site here at Mighty Dare Farms.
And this last room right here is our walk-in cooler. After they've been inoculated, incubated, and fruited, as soon as we harvest them, we put them in a cooler so we can maintain the absolute best quality of mushrooms before they go out to the market. And so we have to have a sizable walk-in cooler for keeping all that stuff. And then they go all out to the different places.
Right, so you can find Two River Gourmet mushrooms at about 40 of the finest restaurants in Monmouth and Ocean counties, about 15 retail locations, including Sickles, Delicious Orchards, most recently Food Town, locations of Seagirt, Red Bank, and Atlantic Highlands, 5 farmers markets throughout our county, and several CSAs.
And hopefully, once we get this all up and running, we'll have them out here at the farm as well. And you can come here and get them. But right now, you can, as Casey said, we've got them all over the county, and there's plenty of places for you to find them.